Hello, screenwriters, and welcome to Writing for Screens. Ask me almost anything. My name is Glenn Gers. I am usually here every Monday through Friday, if I can make it, at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, working on the step-by-step project in which I am letting you share my screen and look over my shoulder as I write a script. Step by step, every day's work. But every once in a while, because I get a lot of questions while I am doing it and through various comments, I try and just take a session to ask anything, answer anything. Sorry. So we got a bunch of prepared questions, and also I'm hoping that folks who are on live will also ask. But today's first question was, how do I become a professional screenwriter? You get 5,000 variations on this, but it's all really the same question. Hello, Nacho. Good to see you. Hello, this is Kitschy. Hello, hello. Today's question, first question at least, is going to be, how do I become a professional screenwriter? Now, let me just tell you right up front, I kind of did a trick here, a bait and switch, because I am not going to tell you how to get a job. There are plenty of advisors and assorted consultants, people who will write articles. There's a lot of online magazines, Script Magazine, Creative Screenwriting, whole bunches of them where they just spend so much time telling you how to get into the business. I don't know. I believe honestly that the way you get into the business is that you get very, very, very good and very, very, very lucky. So I'm not going to talk about that part. I'm going to talk about how you become the person who is professional, the person who they want to hire. I'm not going to tell you how to get hired. I'm going to tell you how to be the person they want to hire, because I honestly believe that's what it's all about. If you become the most professional screenwriter you can be, and you put yourself out there over and over and over, maybe you'll get lucky. Maybe you won't. Doesn't matter. The point is, you might as well be trying to be the most professional you can be. And the first step towards that is get good at the work. Get good at the job. This is not something you learn after you have the job. You have to be really, really, really good at it to get one of these jobs. They're hard. They are so demanding. They are so competitive. They are at the most frightening level of skydiving while wearing explosives. It's really hard. And so the main thing you need to do is get good at the work. The actual writing of scenes, writing of characters, figuring out of stories, how to write dialogue. Get good at that. Now, this should take you 10 years. This should take you a long time to get good. It is not easy to get good at this. So that's the first job, and that really should occupy you for a long time. While you are at it, oh, hello, I write. Good to see you, and thank you, this is Skitchy. Yeah, I agree. It's really George Saunders is a writing professor and famous writer who also he's written a book called something about swimming in a pond in the rain, I think it is. Anyway, it's a phenomenal book on how to write. Let me get back to my ways that you can become a professional, because these are actually really useful. The other thing that professionals do that the rest of us can't, you have to be able to work on demand. You need to be able to write whatever they throw at you in the time that they throw it at you. That's part of the job. And that is actually something that most artists don't learn. Nobody says to you, okay, part of learning how to do this is you've got to write this thing. It's very specific, and you got to do it now. Go. That's part of being a professional when it comes to screenwriting. So therefore, hey, Linda Beth, glad you're here. Learning, giving yourself that experience. Test it for yourself. Say, I am going to write this scene in 2 days. I'm going to write this script in 2 months. Whatever it is, learn how to be able to work on demand. If you are in a community of wannabe screenwriters, give yourselves assignments. Get together and say, let's practice what happens if somebody says, okay, you have to write 2 scenes, one of which is set on a bus and the other one is this, and these are what's going to happen in it, and come back tomorrow with that scene. Get used to doing that. That's really part of being a professional. And it's not an experience you'll get any other way. The next thing is, you need to really have talent and vision. You need to know what your talents are and what your voice is. And yet, you need to be able to do what anybody asks you and to be able to get along with other people. And these things do not go together. Being talented tends to make you want to do it your way. Having a vision makes you want to do it your way. You're like, I see how this story could go. I know how that character could be so cool. Now, you need to be able to bring that ability to imagine and to think of things your way. And then you need to be able to put it aside and yet somehow still use those skills. It is really, really hard. Have talent and vision. Work on those. Think about what you define as talent and what you want to work on that you're good at. And think about what your style is, what your voice is, what kind of stuff you want to write. And yet at the same time, you need to learn how to set everything you believe in aside and do what you're told. That is a big part of being a professional screenwriter. The other thing is, and I cannot stress this enough, be able to change your work. No professional in the history of screenwriting has ever handed in their first draft and somebody made it. I really, except maybe during the silent era when they were basically writing it as they, making it up as they went along. Everything gets rewritten. It gets rewritten for the weirdest of reasons. It gets rewritten because of product placement. It gets rewritten because the actor doesn't want to play a certain thing. It gets rewritten because the producer says, oh, I don't like Chinese restaurants. I want them to go to a fried chicken restaurant. I mean, the number of weird, personal, irrational things that people will say that you have to then rewrite to fit is part of being a professional. Everybody has an opinion, and in screenwriting, everybody is allowed to tell you what to do. You have layers and layers of producers and executives and people who all get to give you notes. Notes are when somebody goes through your script and tells you stuff they want you to change. You have to change it. That is part of being a professional. So be able to change your work. Think, how can I do the same thing in this other way? Because you don't want to change it in such a way that you lose whatever is valuable about it. Or sometimes you have to say, actually, that's funny. I will say, I have heard that Clint Eastwood bought it and shot it as is. I will bet you anything there were production rewrites, that there were locations that were different, even with Clint Eastwood building that town. Furthermore, I guarantee you, the draft that he bought was not the first draft they wrote. Okay? And that's the important thing. Yes, absolutely. There are some scripts where somebody says, oh, well, I guarantee you, if you could get to the production records of Unforgiven, you would see there were many, many changes. But especially before he got the script, and even then, I don't know about that legend being literally true. I don't believe that they have an unchanged script from the purchase to the I do know that it was very much something he really liked and said, I'm just going to wait until I'm old enough to play this. Sorry, little aside there on Unforgiven. Let me get back to changing, because this is despite this is Kitschy's fair poke, good poke, you do need to be able to change your work. One of the things professionals know is that rewriting is part of the job. And this is actually also something I've been trying to teach in the step-by-step project. I've been trying to show everyone that one of the ways you get to be able to be fast and on demand is to remember it's going to change. So it's okay to do the best you can at the moment and then plan on rewriting it. So a lot of the time that I've been writing stuff in the step-by-step project, I've been writing stuff where I'm saying as I do it, this isn't quite it. This is not quite the scene I need it to be, but if I just get something down here, I know that when I come back, I can rewrite it and I'll be 10% along the path to what it needs to be or whatever. The more comfortable you get with the idea that writing is actually throwing down stuff and then rewriting it, that whole process is writing. Writing is creating, rewriting over and over and over, like hundreds of times, actually. You don't even notice it after a while. You're just like, this is part of the process. I don't just get it right. I get it as right as I can, and then I write, and then I rewrite it. Thomas is asking, are there any rewriting exercises that help? Should the focus be on keeping characters and dialogue? No, there's absolutely no rule like that. Definitely not. The rewriting exercise is try and rewrite things. Like write something and then say, what is it about that? First of all, show it to other people and see how they react to it. And if people are all not getting something or all not liking something, you have to take that into account and see, how could I change this to make that clearer or to make it work better or to be something that, change it to something else because people don't like it. Or if you really, really love it, cool. But, if you wanted to give yourself a rewriting exercise, say, okay, I'm going to take, in some cases, like, I want to do this scene, but take out one character. Or I want to do this scene, but it has to be set in a very different place. Try it just as an experience, because that's the sort of thing you do have to do as a rewriting. But the main thing is rewriting is just every single thing you write. Look at it and say, what's good about it? What's bad about it? How can I make it better? That's what rewriting is, just making it a little better, making the parts that you think, oh, that's not quite right, you rewrite it. You write it again and again. Honestly, I don't know of any professional writer who hasn't rewritten their script 20 or 30 times minimum. Even the people who blast down their first draft in 3 weeks, you hear about, there are certain writers who are like, I'm going to think it out, I'm going to get the plot, and then I'm just going to sit and write for 3 weeks, and I'm going to have a script. They have a draft. I guarantee you, they then rewrite that. How do you get to know your characters? That's a great question. Let me finish this, and then I'm going to do that. After you have gotten used to changing things, there's 2 more really, really important things I want to talk to you about being a professional writer. The first one is you have to be persistent as hell. You have to really, really keep at it. You have to write script after script. You have to do all sorts of jobs you never thought, you have to try things. You have to work for people who will totally let you down. You have to try all sorts of things, and you have to keep trying, because when I say you have to be really, really good and really lucky, you have to work on the good part, and then you have to be persistent in making yourself available to luck. You will not get lucky if you do not keep writing new scripts. You will not get lucky if you don't keep introducing yourself to people. You are going to get shot down 1,000,000 times. You are going to get let down 1,000,000 times, and you have to keep being persistent and trying again, trying new ways, trying the same way 100 times, and then trying a different one as well. You have to be persistent as hell. I personally spent 12 years as an office temp after I had an agent still trying to get jobs. And that was before the 8 years before that. We're talking 20 years before I was a professional. And then once I was a professional, I still had to be persistent. I still had to try and introduce myself to people. I still had to try and show people my work. That's the most important thing. Do new work and show it to people. Get it out there however you can. The other thing you need to be is self-sufficient. You need to be able to do it by yourself. If no one is helping you, if no one is listening to you, you still need to do it. You still need to figure out how to get better with every script. You have to figure out how to survive while you are not being accepted. You have to figure out how to listen to what people want or need and figure out how to do that without them telling you. Okay, nobody wants to hire a writer and then have to tell them what to do. That is not part of being a professional. Part of being a professional is obviously ask questions, but you need to be able to take care of yourself for the job. Okay, that is my main advice on how to become a professional writer. I'm just going to run through them very fast one more time because I really think these are important. First of all, get good at the work. Second, be able to work on demand. Third, have talent and vision and yet be a team player. Fourth, be able to change your work. Professionals know that rewriting is part of the job. Fifth, be persistent as hell. And sixth, be self-sufficient. Figure out how to survive when you are not being rewarded, because it happens to all of us. Okay, those are the ways you can become a professional. Whether or not you get hired, at least you'll be a professional. At least if somebody wants to hire you, you'll be at that level. That's my advice. Okay, Larry started writing AI to figure out what I want to write. That is brilliant. Okay, I like this. Okay, new use of AI. The idea of writing AI or writing software that suggests things is in order to tell you what you don't want to do. I like it. I would say if it was free, do it. If it's not free, don't do it because you don't want to pay someone to give you bad ideas. Yes, I am very skeptical, screamingly skeptical about writing artificial intelligence, writing software that suggests story ideas, suggests character types. They're just not my idea of helpful. Okay. The book Screenwriting is Rewriting. Jack Epps. Yes. Of course he does. Of course. Epps was a big. It was really interesting. Cash and Epps were a team who were famous right when I was trying to break into the business. They had just broken in, and they were famous for having done a lot of rewrites and jobs that never got made. And they were among actually. Then they finally sold a thing called Legal Eagles and got famous by their name. Oh, it is free. Okay, cool. Hi, Matt. All right, let's get back to Brice's question. How do you get to know your characters? This is interesting because it's going to come up to another question I want to talk about. How do you get to know your characters? I would say that there's a couple of ways that you want to work. The first is, and if I may, I'm going to suggest two of my own videos help with this. One is the 6 essential questions, because those questions, I believe, define a character. They tell you who that character is in the story. And another one is building character arcs. I would suggest you watch that for creating characters. I'm also going to do a whole character video. I'm just working on it now. But here's the thing about characters. They only exist in the story, but you need them to feel real to you. And so I am not a big fan of spending a lot of time inventing things outside of the story that give you background on them, like what high school they went to or what their favorite flavor is or what kind of shoes they wear. Yeah, if that helps you, great, do it. If some people write a whole biography or they just sort of brainstorm what they think this person is like, I try to find those things in the scenes. That's my personal advice, is the more that you can define your character, get to know your character by what they're doing and what they're feeling in the story, the more that your character will become alive in the scenes, I believe. It's just a way to not find yourself defining your character in ways that never show up in the script, and then you find that in the scenes, whatever brand of shoes they wear won't really affect what they do in the next scene. It may help you. For some people, it helps them, and I really do feel like if you find it helpful to draw a map of their house or to write their biography of their grandparents, do it. That's great, as long as that actually helps you write the script. If it just helps you be interested in your day's work, that's not good enough. You really want to know your characters in the story, because in the story you're going to have plenty of stuff. They're going to be wearing clothes in the story. You can choose their clothes for those scenes, but that will help you because they'll be in the moment. They'll be in the story's events, and therefore whatever you're choosing to define them as in the story will help. I believe it is more important to know the inside of your character than the outside. You never know who's going to play your character. You never know what kind of version is going to come out. But the inner story, what they want, that's why I'm talking about those 6 questions. What they want, what they're trying to get, why they feel the way they do, those tend to be the things that you can really get your teeth into to create a character. That is my advice, Brisa. There's a lot of other things you can do, but I would spend my time working on the character in the story. There are so many moments in which they will be involved with another character. Remember that. Character only exists in relationships, okay? You learn about a character by seeing them in their relationships to other characters. So just the amount of that's in your story is plenty. You will have a lot to work with there. That is my... Matthew likes to be with the concept and tailor characters to fit into it. Some people like that. Some people don't. Some people like to think about the character and then figure out what they're saying from that. There's no right way. There is absolutely no right or wrong process as long as you're actually getting scripts written. If your process helps you and it's writing a character biography, great. If you are not getting scripts written, not a great process. The whole point of a process is to get the work done. So that is a big one for me. Let's get back to, I just want to briefly talk, this is just a recommendation. There was a Twitter thread that I read, which was, what's the difference between writing for a network or writing for a streaming service? I have to just stop here for a second because I'm getting complimented. I'm so glad you like it. I am really glad. Please do not hesitate to ask me further questions. You can do that by contacting me at writingforscreens.com. And there's a little button that says contact me on basically every page. You just click that button. It opens up an email window. Send me a question. That's a great way to do it. Or just right here in the comments of this or any video, you can ask me questions. So, as I was saying, the actual differences between writing for a network or a streaming service in terms of professionalism, in terms of your job, I thought that was interesting because the one thing I have not done is written for a streaming service. And so I thought, gee, I don't know. A New Yorker writer, Emily Nussbaum, asked that question on Twitter, and she got a thread of really interesting answers. Some of the answers were just sort of guessing. People are like, I bet it's like this. But a bunch of people who actually have written for networks and streaming services answered. So one of the main things is streaming services tend to buy and make a whole season at once. And so therefore, the writing staff is hired, they come in, they write their scripts, and the shooting doesn't start till the writing is finished. So therefore, the writers are gone by the time they shoot. That's exactly the opposite of network, where they tend to be shooting and writing sort of like week to week. They're only a couple weeks ahead. And therefore, it's part of being a network writer's job to go to the set. If on the episode that you have written, you are considered a producer and you are supposed to be there, you're supposed to be involved in casting, you're supposed to be talking with the director about how things are done. And so therefore, there's a huge difference, because the streaming writers, they write their script and then they leave and some other bunch of people make it. Very, very different. Apparently network executives tend to be more hands-on. Like week to week, they are giving notes on the episodes. Streaming seems to be less so. I would guess that sort of depends on the situation. But also the money is different, partly because the time is different, and also because the union rules for network and streaming are different. So therefore, the network jobs tend to pay better. And as one person said, I just thought this was interesting, writing for streaming, you don't have the pressure of 4 mini cliffhangers for each episode to lead to a commercial break. And you aren't restricted to exactly 43 minutes per episode. I thought that was true. The thing about network is you have to be and this I have done. We're working on network shows. I've had people say, the showrunners say, I had to cut a really good joke because we were 20 seconds over. And you really, down to the second, you are not allowed to run long. Whereas on streaming, if your episode is like good, but it's running an extra minute or two, fine, no problem. So, okay, hold on. Imagine getting to pitch on a property like Barbie and wondering what the character is like. And Battleship are so hard to write. Yes and no. As Marvel has shown us, and as honestly, the first Transformers was pretty good. They sort of fallen down the wayside. But although I have not seen Bumblebee, but I've heard it's pretty good on characters. The whole point about pitching on a character like Barbie is you're being asked to create the character, to say my version of Barbie, and to think, what do I think about Barbie? How does Barbie feel? What does Barbie want? What are Barbie's problems? These are really legitimate questions. They are full character questions, even if you are dealing with a plastic doll. That is the whole point of character in a story. It doesn't matter how other people may see that character as literally just an object, a type. Oh, they're a frat boy. Oh, that's a accountant, whatever it is. You need to think of them in 3 dimensions, in life, in a story. So that's really important when it comes to character. Okay. Mookie says, character is revealed in what they do and say, and sometimes what they don't do or say. Absolutely. Often, I would say, what they don't do or say. I would say that yes, character is revealed in the scenes, in the action, dramatic action, what people are doing in the moments that we see them on the screen. They are telling us who they are and what they want every minute with everything they do. And how they do it tells us a lot about who they are. Are they someone who is very aggressive? Are they someone who is very manipulative? Are they someone who is very collaborative? That's going to change how they act moment to moment. Concerning dialogue, how would you go about using slang or colloquialisms, or using slang accurately? Well, using slang accurately is tricky. You have to know the slang. If you don't know the slang, research. Go online, go to Urban Dictionary, watch YouTube videos of the people who are using that slang and see how they talk. But basically, figure that you're only going to get it half right. But the main thing about slang or colloquialisms is do the best you can, but you should definitely do it. It's part of how people talk. Everyone essentially uses slang. Lawyers and doctors tend to talk in the methods and language of their profession. That's really slang. It's their slang. The British aristocracy in Downton Abbey had a certain slang, a certain way of talking, a certain set of words that referred to things that only they would know. So the answer is you're always writing slang. Always think of it as writing slang and always do it, and try your best to write the best you can. But also remember, mostly the audience will give you some leeway to be wrong. If it is flowing in the character and the scenes, you kind of make up your own language every time. And that's important. If it's consistent and believable, that's helpful. Obviously, if you're writing about a group of people who use a specific type of slang and you're using it wrong, those people are gonna know. Which means if you're my age and you're writing about young people, there's gonna be a fair amount of stuff that you're just gonna get wrong. Do the best you can. Don't let it hold you back. Don't be afraid. Okay. I'm gonna do one more. Yeah, I'm gonna do one of my prepared questions before I get into some of you guys' others, because this one's really important. This actually came up during the step-by-step sessions, but it was so great that I just took it out and am going to use it. It's 234 Pika Pika said, any tips on overcoming the fear of writing something personal? And I'm going to actually read his exact words because they are super cool. Ready for this? He wrote, often I feel ashamed, he or she actually, often I feel ashamed to write something because it could reveal something about my fears and longings. Very stupid, because this is usually my best writing. Any tips on how to overcome that? Well, yeah, it's going to be your best stuff. When you write things that are personal to you, you are going to write with an extra vision and talent and energy. And I urge you all to consider always trying to be personal. I've written stuff set. I wrote a biblical set story. Obviously, it's not personal to me. That life is not personal to me, but I try to make it personal. I try to think, what is it like to be in this moment? What does it feel like? And in doing that, you are going to always reveal some of yourself. And you got to get used to it. You got to just try to keep doing it. So I'm going to give you a couple of things. One, I urge you to watch my video on the subject of instinct. It's really about that. The other thing is disguise, transform. Don't be afraid to mingle the imaginary and the personal. When you write science fiction, you have to imagine your personal feelings and your personal experiences in terms of spaceships and aliens. That works. It's okay. There is nothing wrong with taking something deeply personal and putting it into someone who is so not like you that you hope no one will know it's you. I wrote a movie, which I'm so proud of, about two women, one who was obese and one who was anorexic. I'm not a woman. I have never been obese or anorexic, and yet I tried to find in those people my most personal feelings, because everyone, I think, has very, very confused and conflicted feelings about their body, the difference between their body and their personality, between their body and themselves, and about how we are seen in the world. And so I felt that was really personal, even though those people were not me. I urge you to feel free to get personal without actually writing about yourself. That's cool. That's the good writing. That's the best stuff. The other thing you can do is make your characters distinctive. The more that you make your characters, who are carrying your personal stuff into the world, distinctively themselves, the more you feel a certain weird psychological distance from them. At the same time, you know that you're talking about things you care about. It's cool. It works very well. If you make them good characters, you will feel less afraid to write personally. So I urge you to think about that. And then the other thing is small steps. Do it a little bit at a time. Build up to it. Get used to it. Get used to finding out that nothing terrible is going to happen and that, in fact, your best stuff is there. So that is what I wanted to say about that. Do not be afraid to be personal. Always be personal and never be just bluntly autobiographical unless you're willing to, really say, this is my story. But even then, once you turn it into a story, it's changing. It's transforming. Enjoy that. There is this weird place that only artists really get to, where you are both being the most exposed as you can be and the most hidden, the most making it up. It's not me. I'm playing with toys here. And yet it's personal. It's this brilliant, weird, fabulous thing that storytellers get to do. I urge you to embrace that weird mixture of being deeply personal and being completely imaginary. That's where art happens. Okay. Matthew, is it possible for a writer to represent themselves? Are agents and managers really necessary? Yes and no. The thing about representing yourself is the people who are getting your representation will not necessarily care. The whole point about somebody being a professional agent or manager is that they have sort of signed on to the industry. They are putting their name and their work up as the voucher for their artists. And so therefore, when you come to somebody and say, I'm a writer, I'm representing themselves, all they're thinking is, I have no reason to trust this person. So in terms of representing yourself, like to call someone up and say, would you read my script? You're just going to hit that same blank wall, which is they have too many people calling. So they have to go through agents for two reasons. One, legally, it's just safer. There's a legal construct between the agencies and the companies so that nobody's going to sue each other if misunderstandings happen about who owns, some idea that both things happen. The other reason is because they're a gatekeeper. Agents and managers are a bottleneck to keep the flow of stuff coming at the production companies to a reasonable amount. So they want that. They like that. As far as legally, no, you don't legally. Like if a producer reads your stuff and they say, I want to hire you, get a lawyer. You should have a lawyer look at any contract. That's the thing. Ideally, an agent is doing that. Ideally, an agent is the one who looks over the contract and says, we want more of here and we want to change that. But a lawyer can do that, an entertainment lawyer. So the answer is it possible to have a writer represent themselves? Yes, but it depends on what you mean by represent. It certainly is possible. It's a question of whether anyone will care. The same Barbie and characters as franchises like Star Trek or Star Wars. Yeah, in a sense, that's true. That's the whole point. I actually believe there is a Barbie movie in the works, and it could be great. You never know. Don't count out anybody's creativity when it comes to taking what is essentially a mythological character. Barbie or Transformers are myths. They are types where you have certain things about them that are commonly known, and everything else you get to create your version of that. Hello, Flying Over Trout. When this came up, good. I am so glad. Hello, Janae. Janae, I'm going to get to your question in just a minute. Okay. Yeah, there's no backstory to Ouija. Interestingly, the Ouija movies are not bad. The second Ouija movie is a pretty good character story. Okay. A character that's actually a double role, by which you mean I assume you mean somebody who has two personalities or types of life or a secret identity, or do you mean like a person playing two parts? Let me know about that. But my basic idea about that is if you have a character who is is lying to people in the story or has two identities, the important thing is to have both of them be utterly convincing. And when you're writing any one of them, just make sure that you are writing it as if it was the real thing. Just try and do the best you can not to tip that one of them is fake. That's what I think. Yeah, no, exactly. That's you got to give. By the way, the Lego movie's good, and they were quite creative about how to make a movie about blocks. I would say if I was starting out today, look for a manager, just because there are more of them. There are more managers and agents, and they tend to be a little more open-minded to taking people on because they believe in their talent or they think that agents tend to be much more about contracts, negotiations, and money. Agents tend to be agents are really just hard to get. It is really, really, really hard to get an agent. It is really hard to get a manager, but it's slightly easier. Okay. Cool. Personal fiction trip. That's excellent. Do I tell it's my life story twisted to me? This is a good question and very interesting. A lot of producers believe that you should pitch your work with some personal angle to it, some hook that's, this happened to my grandfather, or this was really my life story. In a pitching sense, sure. I do not believe that you want to worry or indicate in any way that your story is anything other than itself. That in the story itself, I don't think you want to make it important that it's personal to you. It should be able to live as if you didn't. The author is dead, if you want to get semiotic about it, which is that a work should stand on its own. Also, just be careful about saying something as personal as your life, only in the sense that you better, if you like it, cool. But if you're twisting up your life in such a way and like with Pika Pika, feeling uncomfortable about some of the parts of your life that you're exposing, don't tell anyone. I would say, there's nothing wrong with saying this really happened to me or this is based in my experience. I just think that only goes so far as in value. Unless it's like, I was born in a gondola hanging off the side of a mountain during an earthquake, that's interesting. But then it better still be a good story. I'm working on a mystery plot line for a game, and the co-creator and I often butt heads on key story pieces. Any advice on working with someone else on where and when to draw the line for changes? That is a good and difficult question. The answer is partly it's a power question. If you're really butting heads, think about why. Like, did you go into this with a misunderstanding? Did you both think that you were doing different things and you both didn't realize that until it was too late? Or do you just have different styles? If possible, see if you can have that conversation. You can say, I really don't like butting heads. Let's talk about why and how we can divide up the decision making. Say, like, if this is really important to you, let it happen. It kind of depends on how much of it, the butting heads is because you guys are telling different stories or have different styles. And then partly, like on a collaboration, are you equal partners? If not, who's got the actual final cut, the final say? They kind of run the show. That is what happens. But the main thing is, try to think for yourself with each headbutt. A, is there any way I can not react in a headbutting way to this? And B, what can I give up? What if I did give up on this? See if there's a certain amount of transactional stuff that can be done. Like, I will give you this one if you will give me that one. Or like headbutting suggests a certain type of not listening. And that's the only thing I can think of is that you want to be able to try to communicate. Think of it as you're in a relationship. And so really think about relationship stuff. Why are you not listening? Are you threatened? Are they feeling like they're going to lose something? What do they have to lose? If you can agree on the end goal and if you can agree on the process, figuring out a process together usually helps. Okay, we got a lot of questions here. My goodness. Okay, just let me check if there's anything. Yeah. I'm going to very, very briefly do Janae, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to name you here. Asked a question which was essentially, what if I think a screenwriting teacher or a book is wrong? And obviously, you have the right to think anybody's wrong at any time. That's fine. But there is a certain amount of stuff where you get these teachers who are giving you a form, a formula, a plan, a checklist, and they're saying, you have to do this. And I just feel it's very important that you remember you don't. I mean, you do if you are in a class and they are grading you because you signed on to that class saying, I'm going to learn what they have to teach me. So you got to do that. But if you are reading a book or seeing a video or getting advice from someone and they are saying something that just doesn't sound right, don't do it. You don't have to. The best thing you can do is read a lot of different screenwriting books because then you'll start to see they don't agree with each other and none of them are right or wrong. The way that this came up, Janae had this, it's a book by a guy I like, a book I like called Writing Screenplays That Sell by Michael Hogue. And he had this formula, this strategy with outer motivation and inner motivation and outer conflict and inner conflict. And he analyzed different things. So like, okay, in Shrek was the example. I think, the outer conflict is something external, something with society, something with other people, but there's an inner conflict which is emotional. Those are true insights into how stories can work. But when you make it a list, a checklist of you have to have this and you have to have this, you have to have these 4 things, I get very uneasy because not every story is alike. And the other thing that happens is, as happened with Janae, she disagreed with his interpretation of the character, which is cool because the real answer to all of these things, including mine, when I tell you that there's, 6 questions that you can answer that will help you, I specifically tried to make it that you care about the questions, not that there's a right answer. There is no right answer for any of these writing questions. There is no, you do not, your interpretation of what Shrek wants to do and the writer of Shrek are going to be different. There were, I guarantee you, 10 writers on Shrek, at least. And of those writers, each one saw Shrek slightly differently. That's why they hired 10 of them. And that's why some of them would fix some scenes and not others. Every single artist looks at everything their own way. And when you see one of these things with like a checklist of you have to fill it out or a bunch of questions, the most important thing to remember is all they're trying to do is get you to put your answer in. It's not that there is a right answer. The point of asking questions or making lists of qualities of people is to get you to define that character for yourself, in your script, in your way. That is the key to becoming a good writer, is that you are not trying to fill out someone else's checklist. You are trying to write the story as you imagine it. And the questions are there to help you to define those things in terms of conflict and motivation. Those are good questions to ask. And inner or outer, that's a good question to ask. But you don't have to answer it a certain way. You can say that the inner conflict is something that only you feel is true about the character and nobody else will ever get it. That's cool. Doesn't matter. What matters is that when you are writing, you ask the question, what are they trying to do? What is their motivation? What do they want? They're all the same question in different ways. What is their goal? That is a good question to ask. You don't have to get the same answer as anybody else. Okay, quickly, have you ever written fantasy? Yeah, I did. Especially when I was a kid, I was very influenced by a bunch of things, including Phantom Tollbooth and Lord of the Rings, and a bunch of stuff and so I did write fantasy back then. Have I written professional fantasy? Have I written fantasy professionally? I don't think I have. It's scary that I can't remember all my jobs, but that's it. It's the truth. In short, working with characters like Barry, Scark, or Picard, you have to understand the myths of the character and add some other elements to enhance the character. I would say yes, but more than that, you have to understand the myth of the character. You have to understand the known qualities or elements of the character, and then you have to bring them to life your way. It's not so much enhancing as your interpretation of the character. It's your, just as we're seeing with Star Wars, as different people take on the same characters, they change slightly. And different people will like different versions, but there's actually been several different Han Solos. There's been many different Hamlets and Macbeths. The idea that there's any kind of character who's known or mythological, you have to figure out your version of Achilles or Agamemnon. That's what everybody does. That's the job. Okay. Do you have any advice for simplifying or streamlining a story? Yes. I absolutely have advice on this. And greetings in Sweden. How you doing? Cool. Let me give you a couple of really, really useful things. First of all, how to outline. I would say the biggest thing about simplifying or streamlining your story is outline. I don't know if you do outline, but if you do, the other thing I would say is the 6 essential questions. Really watch that video and try to use that to define what your center of your story is. Because if you got all these different things, the whys and hows, the question is what's happening in the moment of the story, which brings us to dramatic action. These things that I'm putting up here are all videos I have made to try and explain these elements of screenwriting. The main thing is if you're finding yourself getting lost in your story, I really believe this will help. The main thing is to say, of all the different things that I have to tell in this story, which one is the most important? And once you do that, then you sort of prioritize, and then you say, okay, I've got 50 or 60 scenes in a feature. And if you do your outline, you can just say, this is running too long. Which scenes can I get rid of? Which scenes can I imply or just cut? I hope that helps. Those are really, that's a good question. And I do believe my best answer is those other videos. Software question. Okay, we're coming up on the end, so let me just try and get some of these in. Last finish. Yeah, in theory, if that's a software, if you are working with software, you should be able to do a find and replace. That's the cool thing. I have to tell you, this question was a lot worse in the 1980s when we didn't have software, when I had to do it with a typewriter, and changing characters' names mean I had to retype the entire document. If you want to change a character's name, you should be able to do it with a find and replace. That's it. You still have to read through the whole thing because sometimes it'll miss it for some reason. But let me know, Sadie, if that makes sense to you. But to me, that's literally a software question. There should be somewhere in your software a find and replace. Almost every software that I know of will have at least find. And at very worst, you just go find, and then type in the new one. But usually they have find and replace. I don't know what software you're working on. If you're in a class, you have to do it. That's the money. Yes. Exactly. Exactly right. Okay. So we are almost at the end. Let me just quickly. Sometime one ends up writing organically only about an hour. It doesn't fit in format. How does one add another half hour to it? That's not random. It is specific. I would say, ideally, first of all, I hope you're writing with an outline. If you are not writing with an outline, once again, I cannot emphasize enough how much I have good advice on this. Why outline and how to outline. And if one thing you can do then, Anshul, is once you have it in an outline, you can say, scene by scene, is there something about this that should be expanded, made into 2 steps, whatever it is? Is there more to answer? More than that, I can't answer. But what you're basically saying is, my work is too short. I would say, there's lots of ways to pad it, but if it's really coming out that short, maybe it just shouldn't be an hour and a half. I don't know. I would need specifics on that one. Yay! Thank you, Phil. And yes, and Johannes, please, if you have further questions about this, if any of you have further questions of things I've said, you can contact me. At least at the moment, I am trying to answer everybody's questions. And so you can just go to Writing for Screens, hit contact me, send me the question in an email. Yes, I am sure in Google Docs there is something called find and replace, or replace. I can't check it right now, but find and replace. Here, let me just at least. At least I can show you this. This is what you are looking to do. Find and replace. That's going to solve it. Okay. Yay! I'm glad. And good luck. That's a hard one. With collaboration is hard. Communication is very important. The other thing about collaboration and communication is sometimes giving up stuff. Thinking about what do I want? What can I realistically get? You can't get everything. What's the point? What is the actual point of this specific project? And, everything can't be a 10. Some things have to be a 5. Some things have to be a 3. And then you start to be able to collaborate better. I am so glad that this is good. Yeah. I am too nice. I am way too nice. And also, it's been an hour, so let me just quickly. I had. Do I have one more thing? Yeah. This was it. How do I write a neutral ending? Someone wrote in. Ellen wrote in. I want. Usually in a story, there's a happy ending where the character gets what they want, or a bad ending in which they fail. Do you have any tips on writing a neutral ending specifically? Not an open ending, but one that is neither good nor bad. And I thought this was really fascinating, because at first I was like, can you do that? And I gotta say, I believe you can't. I believe neutral ending doesn't help anybody. And I did hold on. Did I endings? No, I did some video on endings, but mainly the thing about endings, and this really comes up here in the 6 Essential Questions video too. Your ending is defining your story. Your ending is saying, this person does or does not get what they want. So neutral kind of doesn't exist because, yes, you can leave it open. You could say, we don't know what's going to happen. The book Stuart Little has a mind-blowingly open ending. And then something like Inception has kind of an open ending. It's open. It's open to interpretation. But the answer is you can have an open ending, but I don't think you can have a neutral ending, because a neutral ending is, but if the character is still on their journey, this is what I was thinking about. The book Stuart Little, not the movie, the book Stuart Little ends very much with a sense of the journey just in some ways just beginning. That's okay, because then the ending is they're going on their journey. That's part of no matter how you slice it, an ending is going to be an ending. And as soon as you end something, it's going to come out with a call on what happened before. You are going to make a decision on whether or not the person got what they wanted. The only thing, I mentioned this before once, the only movie that I know that has a completely neutral ending is Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And that's partly because it's not entirely a story, but it's also just an absurd and arbitrary ending. Okay, so I am going to, listen, Sadie, if you have not been checking, there's some good stuff here. Find and replace, Control F usually. Anyway, so I would just say, Sadie, check it out. People are trying to help you in the chat. Yay, Rachel, thank you so much. I'm so glad. You are entirely welcome, and this is a great way to end. Yes, absolutely. Okay, Sadie, you got the chops. You're a good storyteller. They could get something else that they didn't want. That still can be that. To me, that qualifies as a happy ending. They are very often a story is about how somebody thinks they want one thing, and in the course of trying to get it, the story, they discover that they want something else, or that the thing they wanted wasn't what they thought it was. So yeah, those are definitely legit. But I would qualify that as either a happy or sad ending. Happy and sad being a very valued term, but I'm saying it's still an ending. It's not neutral. It's not nothing is happening. Okay. I'm gonna disagree on this. Right. So the answer is it's kind of not a neutral ending. That's a win. Rocky ends with an absolute triumph, which is just not defined the way most people would define winning a boxing match. He defined winning, so then he got his definition of winning. Rocky is really a great script in that way. Rocky is a great script in many ways, actually, but one not in relations of men and women. It's really dated in that sense. It's actually kind of painful. But in terms of structure, Rocky is famous for defining your ending so that you can be clear that Rocky does win even though he loses. He loses society's version of the box. He's not going to win that boxing match, but he won because he survived it. And that's absolutely a win. Okay, so this has been great. I am thrilled to see you all. I will be tomorrow. I think we are going to get to the end of the first rough draft in the writing project. Tomorrow or the next day, someday soon. Okay, go write something.